All right, well, welcome Nash Nation to another Strength Coach talk. This is Coach Mike and Coach Jake, as always, Coach Nate. We're actually reporting today as the official strength coaches for the Minnesota Mash Baseball Club. So we want to speak to our overhead athletes and our baseball members specifically. I'm going to touch on the topic of arm care. So commonly, the misconception is that people relate arm care as just to a series of rotator cuff strengthening exercises. And we want to kind of create a bigger image of like what rotator cuff strength and arm care actually marriage of strategies outside of just doing some rotator cuff strengthening. So let's just start out by defining what the rotator cuff is and like what we're doing when we strengthen it, strategies towards that, and then we'll just kind of get deeper into the topic as we go.
Cool. Well, basic anatomy, you get the sits muscles, the supraspinatus, the subscap, infraspinatus, and teres minor. But little recognition is given to like the lower trap, the rhomboids, the lats, the upper traps, things like that. Those can kind of get demonized, for lack of a better term. And like when your upper track is overactive, it's probably not its fault, type of thing. But I think biggest thing we need to break out of as a community of overhead athletes and strength and conditioning professionals in general is just getting away from just the rotator cuff and understand the rotator cuff doesn't work independently.
Yeah.
The whole system, all the way down from your feet to your head to your fingers, is all playing a role. Yes, you have to have a functional and strong and mobilized to an extent rotator cuff, but your rotator cuff is almost going to play off of how well those other systems are kind of functioning, and vice versa. Like your lats are going to function differently if your rotator cuff is strained. It's going to take up some of the slack versus your posterior delt and blah, blah, blah. So just basic overview of that, I guess.
I think a lot of people think that if they strengthen their rotator cuff, they all of a sudden throw stronger.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my rotator cuff is bulletproof. Well, if your hips suck, and if your ankles suck, then you're not going to throw harder, no matter how many perfect J-band exercises you do. But as soon as I hear arm care, I immediately think of the violence that a baseball throw creates. And so I just think, like, arm care, of course you have to do it. Like, this should be a non-negotiable in baseball. This shouldn't be like I do my arm care, look at me, I'm like going above and beyond. You're literally putting your arm in such a vulnerable position, such a dangerous position for the human body, that if you don't correct that using arm care and corrective exercises, you're not going to last very long. So when I think arm care, it's like vital. Like, you have to do this. This is not a questionable topic.
Equally as important, you have to understand it. You have to understand what it is. So I love that we're doing this talk.
Yeah, I think the idea of like what people come in with is, they all know external rotation. They all know, like, you see a lot of people just incorporating sleep or stretch for joint capsule mobility. And they don't necessarily know like what are the best bang for your buck exercises. So I think the place to start with most people is to actually have somebody take a look at their throwing motion and get some insight in how limited they are in like hip mobility, ankle mobility, and then work your way up to like how is their scap sit. Do we have anything with scapular control that's messed up? Do we have anything weak in that chain? Are we experiencing pain or impingement? Once you have that, then your arm care plan is like laid out for you. That's your first step. But now you spend time strengthening it, but what if you pick out a bad set of exercises for you? So your experience doesn't meet the demands of the lift. So for instance, the bench press is often maligned for a lot of baseball players. Like, oh, you can't bench press. Now, you could bench press if your technique was good and your rotator cuff was stable. But it takes a lot of focus and technique to be good at bench press. So like, for instance, describe bench pressing. Why is it considered bad for baseball players or overhead athletes?
I mean, the most common reason that people think of is like the closed scap position. If you're doing a bench press, what most would consider a proper way or a powerlifting type way is to pinch your shoulder blades down and back, engage the lats, pull the bar apart, et cetera, et cetera. And then just the nature of a horizontal press, you're gonna your pecs and your anterior delt are gonna take precedent. And if you're constantly spending time in violent internal rotation, your posture's poor, you're not taking care of yourself, that's just going to exacerbate that with a bench press. But I think that the biggest way on a more nerdy side, the reason why the bench press is negative in that population is load management. People just not understanding either how to execute the lift or how to like understand when to train it and how often to train it.
Yeah.
when to go hard, when's a good pullback, how to spot it,
Yeah.
when to bail out of the lift with the spotter, etc. So
Yeah.
it gets a bad rep. It can definitely be used as a good tool. I know a lot of really good baseball players that love bench press and use bench press very frequently, but they're also really good bench pressers.
Yeah. Their technique is where
they take very good high precedence in learning the intricacies of a bench press, not just grabbing a bar and pushing it away from you.
Yeah.
Right.
Type thing. So
The way I see the bench press is that I would love to coach the bench press to our baseball players. I would love to. But it seems like out of any lift, this lift is the most ego-driven.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
So as soon as...
Well, just as a male athlete, especially.
It's crazy. Like if you put a junior underneath the bar with no weight, they're gonna feel like they might even get like red in the face. They'll be so embarrassed to like just be benching the bar.
Yeah.
And really nobody cares besides them. But I feel like as soon as you teach them this bench press, I can teach them all I want, coach them the best I can. But as soon as they're not in our gym, let's say like they go to the school gym, throw plates on, let's freaking do this thing, and all of a sudden they're going crazy.
Yeah.
So that's a big reason I'm hesitant to even coach it, is because as soon as you show them like, okay, yeah, we can bench press, then they all of a sudden think, well, I can bench.
Yeah.
So then they go home and bench. They go to school and bench. That's all they do is bench, because something behind the stigma behind benching is that the macho man lift.
Yeah.
And so that's why I even hesitate to coach these kids, that they probably could, and at a young age it'd be good to coach them so they can learn how to have that proper technique. But that's the part that makes me nervous to even show them. That I might as well just say, you know, you're a baseball player, let's just go into loaded push-ups, let's stay with the dumbbells, let's stay with floor presses. Then I know they're going to be safe for their career, instead of taking that risk of showing them a bar.
You can always take the concept or the opposite side approach, which we've all done, is like, okay, we know you're going to bench press during football season. We know you're going to be doing these things in your basement with your buddies, whatever. So let's at least learn how to do it properly here, and like teach the concepts that we're trying to establish. So when they go do that, they know how to limit themselves, and they know how to set up, and they know how to do it correctly.
Right.
I mean, at least then you're covering your own base, saying like, we did what we could to teach you how to bench press properly.
Yeah, and I think that developing the mindset of like the premium is bar speed, to develop explosive triceps, lats, and pecs, are what they should be chasing. And you know, identifying one of the big issues too is like the internal rotation that you'll often see. So like people will adapt to their press by when they weaken in their triceps by like internally rotating their shoulder, and the barbell's putting you in that position. So like getting them to understand where they're supposed to keep their shoulder, what feels best for them, and then teaching them like bar speed. If you see those things coming together and they have good scapular movement when they do push-ups, and they can handle good force control with their body weight and like loaded body weight, like loaded push-up, then I think it's okay to, but then they have to respect the lift. You have to see them respecting the lift.
Yeah.
So, and then if they go out of management, so if they're doing a lot more pressing than they are pulling, again, and they have that obsession, like you were specifying, like they want the bench press to go up for no reason other than just showing people they can press more, that's when you start to get those like check marks of like, okay, I don't think this is going to be good for this athlete.
Yeah.
So I think like lift selection is going to trump rotator cuff work, right? We can all agree on that. So if they're not strategizing their lifts properly, and they're thinking they're safe just by doing some external rotation every week, they're probably at risk, considering the other things that we just talked about.
Yeah.
So let's say that we have the perfect design though. Let's say that we have somebody who's good about their rotator cuff strengthening. Their technique is good. They've bought into a good, smart, comprehensive program throughout the week. They're still at risk because of the nature of throwing.
Yeah.
Right? Just being overhead
Every
athlete.
car crashes, every
Yeah.
bullpen.
They're blowing up their arm.
Yeah.
So what are the things that we would
Super
ask them to do, looking at arm care as like a comprehensive, like overall holistic approach?
Yeah.
What are the other factors that they have to focus on outside of just doing some rotator cuff strengthening, and that's designed for them, or respecting their lifts?
Yeah. I go back to, especially when I work with the youth baseball players, I'll lay them on the ground, and usually the first type of arm care I'll show them is like a Y ISO and a T ISO, just because you can really feel it.
Yeah.
And then I just make them sit there for minutes and say, connect your brain to where you're feeling this burn. This is your rotator cuff. You need this to be a good baseball player. You need this area to be strong to be a good baseball player.
Yeah.
So connect your brain to those muscles and become aware of what you're working. So then from there forth, every time they do, like, they know they're supposed to be working their rotator cuff, they know that after doing some sort of exercise, okay, I don't feel it there. I must not be doing something quite right. I'm not activating the right muscle groups, so I need to maybe find some coaching. But just pure awareness to start, I think is a huge place to start. Knowing what you should be feeling, where you should be feeling it. Knowing the muscles themselves is really important as well. Just making them aware of what they're using. Because, I mean, that's their moneymaker, essentially, is those, 7-8 muscles back there.
Yeah.
So.
And it also teaches scapular control through motion, but initially with an isometric. Like, they just learn how to control that position.
Right.
Hopefully we'll understand upward rotation and protraction and retraction later down the road in the youth population.
Right.
Yeah. But like, what about like nutritional strategy?
Yeah,
like,
I'm thinking they just need to understand like nervous system in general, and like your body isn't muscular, skeletal, endocrine, etc. It's driven by everything.
Everything's there.
When you throw a bullpen, and especially if your coach is watching, guys are hyping you up, there's a batter in the box, you're competing, there's a level of hype, there's a level of adrenaline, there's hormones released, there's things that happen, and your nervous system goes into a fight or flight response.
Yeah.
So like, yes, you damage specific muscle joint, you compromise things that in like a local sense, but you need to understand that after you do something like that, it's the same as getting scared. If I turn the corner and you jump out, bam, get me, like I'm gonna, oh man, I'm amped up now. It takes me 10 minutes to come down from that. Now imagine if you got scared for 40 minutes or a 50 rep outing or something like that. Like, it's gonna take you a day or two maybe to come down from that. And not to mention the muscles involved in that. Like, if you scare me, I didn't damage any muscles. I just ramped up quickly to like, what's going on? I need to react right now. Oh, the threat is gone. Okay, now I can come down from it. You have that amplified by 1,000. Plus you have muscular damage. You have joint position compromisation. You have nutritional strategies that you need to implement in order to recover from that. You need to get adequate sleep in there. And if your legs are weak and your core is not adequate, your upper back is going to take more beating and all this other stuff. So like, just understanding the nervous system drives your whole entire unit. It's one system. Like, even if you have a stubbed toe, try to go throw a baseball and your control, you're not going to hit your spots. Like, why would a stubbed toe do that? Oh, I don't know, because it touches the ground every single step. So like, I think that's the biggest thing that I've tried to teach our kids is stop secular approaching the body.
It has to be
Like,
approached everything like
like you're essentially going through this massive trauma every time you pick up a baseball and throw it anywhere near live. Like sprinting, like you can't just go out and sprint every day. You're gonna blow something. You're gonna blow something, or you're just not gonna be able to sprint. You're just gonna something's gonna break in the weakest.
And our velocity culture now, it seems like kids always want to keep adding to their list. I'm gonna throw more. I'm gonna do more. That's gonna get me to my goals. When sometimes the things that are neglected most are the things that you're not thinking about, like sleep and water and just calming your body down after like a hard session. You can't always keep adding and then expect your body to respond the way you want it to.
Even I was just going to touch on nutritionally, like you go through this traumatic experience of throwing and then you go eat inflammatory foods. So not only are you're already inflamed,
things they don't
from
think
this car crash, like you explain it, and then you go eat a Big Mac or like starchy carbs all night long, and then you just stay inflamed instead of like eating non-inflammatory foods, drinking a whole crap ton of water, like getting your body back to this like equal, back to a space where you feel equal.
And then you remember you have homework tonight. Oh, that stresses me out. I have a test next week. Oh, my girlfriend and I got in an argument. All these other things that affect you just as equally too.
Conscious is how you're sitting in class. Like, that's one thing too. You're sitting in classrooms for 7-8 hours if you're dealing with a high school population. And you're saying, I tell kids, like, sometimes your best arm care is just sitting upright. During the day.
That
like
amazing.
Your rotator cuff or your like anterior delta's tight. Well, probably because you spent all day like this. So it's like it's shortened. It doesn't need to lengthen out.
For 8 hours, and then you go throw.
But on one more point on that is the thing I was always trying to talk to some of our like ideal program guys is like the difference between a pro and an amateur, or like a big leaguer or a minor leaguer. Just from my experience, my very small experience, but the pros know, and they're not trying to be arrogant about it, but they know when is a good day. Today is a live day. Today is a day I'm going to maximize my performance. I'm going to go. I just need to grab a pitcher. I need to grab a coach is okay, sure, but today's a good day. I'm ready to rock. I'm going to throw. Versus today's not a good day. I don't have my stuff. Like they understand that, and it's not like pressure to be like, okay, I don't have it today, but I really need to do it because I got to stay on the schedule. Like my week says Wednesday's a bullpen day or whatever. Like a coach will get upset about that every now and again because they're throwing off the plan, but the mature adult decision by the athlete and like a conversation between the two, the coach-athlete relationship is so important too, where if you're just going to keep beating it down because you want to skip to a schedule, like everybody's body adapts differently. And like based off of all this stuff we're talking about, you can influence that, but ultimately if Jake recovers better than me, he might have a day or two in between live outings. I might need a week. So like you have to be conscious of that too, that you have to get rid of external influences to an extent.
What's that, like what's the reward for pushing through those days? If you were like in a state championship and you were their guy.
Like in that case, sure, maybe, but
not on like a Wednesday throwing session.
In December. Like you just don't need to. Like you need to go quality over quantity 95% of your year. Like yes, if you're in that situation, you're like, I don't feel really good at all, but it's Game 7 of the World Series. You don't need to feel good. You have 9 months to recover after this. Like who cares? Go.
No,
and if you don't have it, your coach is going to pull you anyway because you're not performing. So like understanding that and just being an adult about your throwing and arm care in general. But
so they can.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna consensus it, but you're gonna say something else.
I was gonna touch on like another huge issue that we'll have is kids not understanding like the cost of throwing. So like defining that for our population has been a big deal in terms of if you ask a kid and they're not even really that knowledgeable about what throwing intensity is, and you would say, would you do a bullpen every day? No, they obviously are gonna say no. But then they'll
just
go
because
out.
it says bullpen on it.
And they know they identify that throwing off the mound hard with intent. But then they'll go back-to-back days with like high intent throwing velocity from like long toss perspective.
Right.
So like knowing that, you know, what do we consider high risk throwing? Like throwing out of a bullpen situation, throwing off a mound with high intent, throwing on a line farther than 90 feet with like, you know, putting it on a rope, trying to gas out your arm, or doing weighted balls, which aren't the same as plyometric balls, but doing like a, you know, looks exactly like a baseball, but it's either weighs more or less. So knowing where those stresses happen as a thrower is important for them to understand, because like we'll get kids who are very strong and stable. We've done things to protect their arm as best as possible, but then they'll do a poor strategy with throwing because they have that anxiety of like, I need to throw harder. And they don't understand that they're breaking down the foundation they set.
It's all a bank account. If you think about it that way. Like you deposit or you withdraw, but every time you throw a ball at a certain level of intensity, like you're drawing money out of your bank account. So you have to just be mindful of what kind of cash you have in there in the beginning. And I think just not to like bash on any coaches by any means, but this is where I think strength and conditioning has a huge role in load management for that, and like education in general, because I think sometimes sport coaches can coach the mechanics of it, the technique, the approach to it, what pitch to throw when in this situation and all that, and which we don't have, which is awesome. You need that, and they're far better at that, obviously. But in terms of just basic periodization concepts and like understanding high versus low, like muscle and nervous system driven days, and recovery strategies, and like when to recognize when somebody is not there, or like when to recognize somebody is optimally functioning. So like basic periodization of load and volume.
Same seriousness taken on their throwing side as their lifting side in conjunction, so working as a team.
I mean, we can all learn something from like track and field. Like track coaches, in my opinion, are just above the game in every aspect in terms of like how to understand that concept. And the reason I say that is we had a kid in the gym just like last week. He was saying he gets 1 full day off of rest, but he's doing his full arm care routine on that day. But 6 out of 7 days, he's either throwing a live pen / outing in general, or long toss. So like every day except for Sunday, he's throwing something either above 90% of on the line or above 120 feet in the air. And he has dead arm, and it wasn't even January 1st, 2020 yet. And his season doesn't start for a couple more months, and he's already like, my lat is just so tired. And he's on the wall rolling it out like crazy. And if you're watching this, you know who you are. But he's just rolling it out. He's like, Mike, what can I do, man? Like, I need to recover this. I'm like, well, get off the ball for one, and like stop beating the crap out of that tissue anymore, and just take a day.
Yeah.
Like it's not a bad thing to just eat extra food, eat extra vitamin C, get extra sleep, drink more water.
Yeah.
And like just take a day. You don't need to stretch all the time. You don't need to roll all the time. So sorry to go on a little rant there. But
No, it's good. It's good.
This stuff is important, and obviously in our population, like
We just deal with it a lot.
this is it's prevalent.
Well, the hard part too, I was having a talk with one of our pitching coaches, is that even though as a staff we've seen these issues and we've seen similar stories repeat themselves, and you'll see somebody going down that dark chapter, and you're trying to
And
help
you can
them.
almost predict it now,
Yeah.
right?
But they don't want to learn from your experience; they only learn from their experience. And so I think like having a good expectation of what a program's delivering and why we're doing things, and laid out for that person, and describing mistakes people have made in the past to help their experience, is important with kids. Is to teach them. Our goal as a strength staff and as a pitching program is not to have you throw slower and be a worse athlete.
Yeah. Oh man.
In a pure economic
get very
sense,
far.
Yeah.
in a pure economic sense, our goal is to get you to throw harder, to be faster, to be a better athlete.
Yeah.
So if we're limiting you from having a harder program that you may see one of your peers doing,
Yeah.
there's 99.9% of the time there's a reason for it.
Yeah, like
So-
our goal is the same goal as you.
Yeah.
We just have a little bit more experience and wisdom in terms of like the better approach to get there safely.
Yeah, and we've seen guys who like will peak early. Sophomore year they'll start throwing in the high 80s and 90s, and you'll see their career go downwards because they want to keep on chasing that success. It's never good enough.
Yeah.
And they'll blow out their arm, or they'll always be throwing fatigue. The coaches will overuse them. They're not understanding of the long-term career perspective. And then you'll have kids who are early 80s in their sophomore year, and by the time they get to that senior year, they're maybe in the high 80s and 90s, and they've learned through the process of getting there how to do it safe and effectively, and you see them have much more rewarding careers.
Yeah.
And so I think like having that perspective that we've seen allows us and affords us patience in getting them there. Whereas you see kids with that anxiety and that thing like, my buddy got drafted or my buddy got recruited.
Don't worry.
It's like, it's not
Compete with them, sure. But
Yeah.
you have to be okay with the occasional bad day.
Yeah.
Like you have to be okay with like I just don't have it today.
And most velocity decreases that you see throughout the season are due to fatigue,
Oh yeah.
management, and poor strategizing in season. All those things kind of add up. So you shouldn't be peaking in preseason. You should be like mid-season. You should be feeling you're at your best and throwing your best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that point you made about coaches overusing kids too, like he's our best guy, we need him all the time.
Yeah.
But they're really just essentially saying like they don't have a deep enough bench. The coach has to be okay with saying like, I know you probably could get away with getting this done and throwing for us today, but I'm going to hold you back because like my best interest or your best interest is in my hands right now.
Yeah.
And like your health, and I want you to go play collegiate baseball. I want you to go to minors like you want or whatever. 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
Like not just win this meaningless series in March.
Yeah.
Like, so coaches kind of need to put their, I don't know if it's ego is the right word, but need to put the now aside and think like, what is the best interest in the health of the athlete?
Yeah.
Like, yes, we can win this game if I put so-and-so in right now, but he threw yesterday 80, 90, 100
Well,
pitches.
it's educating the coaches on stuff. 'cause
Yeah, it's not their
sometimes-
fault. I mean, most of them back in their day, it was who cares? Just get out and do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Cool. Well, let's summarize so that our viewers can hear all this. So, you guys throw in, I guess, if I'm missing points, but rotator cuff is not a muscle that is predominantly going to be the only contributing factor towards arm health. Its main job is joint centration and shoulder stabilization. So if you're compromising it by throwing and you're just doing a little strengthening, it's not enough.
yeah.
We need to look at total lift selection, individualized approach towards arm care. We need to look at arm care as a strategy is every day throughout the week from the moment you wake up to when you go to bed. Posture control, nutritional strategies, water, stress management, warming up, all those things, knowing what your throwing costs. So if we were to say what is arm care at MASH performance, our job is to start from a very small arena and teach them good habits and prehabilitative strategies towards keeping them healthy throughout the year. And that begins with stuff outside of the weight room. And stuff that we do in the weight room is going to be controlled and given to get the response we want from the prescription of exercises through the long term. So if you're watching this and you're a baseball player, you have specific questions, or you're an overhead athlete, feel free to DM us or ask us questions. We're always here to help. But hope this was educational, and we're in our office every day teaching this stuff, so feel free to stop in.